items.
So moved.
Moved by Director Facio, seconded by Director Popov. All in favor? Opposed, if any, the item carries. Next item.
3.1, we have the draft Regional and Corporate Services Committee meeting minutes of November 12th, 2021.
So moved, Raymond.
That's moved by Director Raymond, seconded by Director Blue. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, the item carries. Next item.
Next item is 4.1. We have a presentation from our Parks and Recreation team.
Thank you.
Turn it over to staff. There
Ms.
we go.
Butveen.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. I had some technical difficulties earlier this morning, so I apologize for that. Jamie is going to be running the presentation, excuse me, this morning from that end. So I'm just going to ask her to advance the slide. So happy New Year to everybody. Today's presentation just talks about, seems so long ago already, but the atmospheric river events and impacts and responses that we saw in the Parks and Recreation world. So it will cover Hope Recreation Center, the Air Park in Hope, as well as all of our parks all over the region. Next slide, please. So we're first of all going to talk about parks and trails. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So you'll see a number of affected parks and trails. This list is not exhaustive at this point, simply because we haven't had a chance to get everywhere to assess completely everything yet at this point, of course, because of the snowpack and things like that. But this is what we know to date. These are the parks and trails. So anywhere from Cascade Falls in Area F, Nielsen in Mission, Island 22 in Chilliwack, Thacker, and also KVR out in Hope area, Sumas Mountain in Abbotsford in Area G. We also have Eagle Point Community Park and the Lakeside Trail in Area H. So quite a range of damage that we did see. The good news is that it wasn't so extensive that it's not repairable. Next slide, please. So I'm going to show you a visual representation of some of the things that we have seen. Cascade Falls, we saw quite a bit of trail erosion, and because of the immense amount of water, we've never actually seen this much water come over the falls in ever, and it was really quite a spectacular sight. But as a result, we needed to complete professional inspections of both the bridge as well as the slope to make sure that everything is and was good to go. And I'm happy to report that that is the case. So it was safe to reopen. Next slide, please. You'll see just it's just a visual snapshot. It's probably, you'll see that rock right on the bottom there, and quite often people will illegally climb over and sit on top of that rock. So it's actually pounding up over top of the rock. So it was quite a spectacular sight, but happy to report that everything is back open and safe. So next slide, please. At Nielsen Regional Park, we had some footbridges that shifted off the footings. There was some log jams and silt removal that is happening that needed to take place from Draper Creek. Also, with the additional intense weather that's happened since, we've also had some pipes break and some challenges keeping that area clear from the ice and snow. And so we're just continuing to work through that. So all those repairs are underway. Next slide, please. In Island 22, the photo you see in front of you shows major silt deposits. And this happened, of course, when the water came up quickly. We did apply for funding from the province, and they did approve the funding, which was awesome, to help us clear this site. Ironically, or interestingly, it turned into quite a transportation hub. If you can show the next slide, please. And so that's just a shot of some of the clearing that's happening. It's actually quite ongoing, because what happens is we have to pile the silt, let it drain, but it also froze with the recent weather. So it's an ongoing project. But we did receive funding from the province on this, which is awesome. If you could show the next slide, please. So these unintended consequences are things you never really imagine may happen, but you'll see a snapshot in front of you, and it became actually a transportation hub. We talked to people who were launching boats to go rescue people from anywhere from Hope and actually going into Sumas Prairie area, running supplies, et cetera, et cetera. So getting that up and operational was very important to be able to access other parts that maybe were not accessible at that point in time. Next slide, please. At Thacker, as well as in the KVR, we saw some trail erosion, and we'll be working on fixing that as well. Next slide, please. Sumas Mountain, we did lose in the areas we've been able to get to. We have lost some bridges and some significant damage to the trails. We have not been able to assess everything, but as soon as we're able to, from a safety perspective, we will make sure that everything is good and ready to go, and ongoing contingency plans to fix the damaged infrastructure. Next slide, please. Eagle Point, we had in area C, we had a footbridge shift off its footings, and a lot of the trail had washed away, so we're working on doing trail repairs in that area. Next slide, please. And on the Lakeside Trail, of course, in area H, lots of challenges in that entire area, and what we saw mostly along the trail was a lot of erosion, debris flow, etc. And so again, working through the repairs in that area. Next slide, please. So that is kind of a synopsis of what's happened in the parks. Of course, with the recent weather events, the ice, the rain, etc., we're now dealing with more trees, but we just encourage anyone in the public that if there is an issue in the parks, just to report it to our parks team, and we'll get out and have a look at it as soon as we possibly can and remediate it. Now, the Hope Regional Air Park was another very interesting site as it pertains to the atmospheric river. Next slide, please. You'll see a photo in front of you of just a shot of a beautiful day out there. But with Hope being cut off from the rest of the valley, of course, there were so many people that were stranded in Hope. Many things started to happen at the air park, and we were thrilled to be a part of the response. Next slide, please. What you'll see is the photo on the left is people gathering at the air park. People gathered at the air park to charter flights to get out. And then you'll see a photo on the right of people going to a helicopter where they had chartered to get out. In a typical year, we've been seeing around 400 flights in an average year. In those first 5 days of this atmospheric river, we saw, we believe, around 400 to 500 flights just in that particular time frame. So what we did was we had to set up a booking line and issue some safety parameters with NAV Canada around that, so that we could schedule flights to come in and out because people were just coming and going, and we wanted to make sure everybody was as safe as possible. We were able to bring in some extra staff and support to be able to help the operations on the ground as well. Next slide, please. There was about 140 vehicles that people parked and just left at the air park, and my understanding is they're all gone now, gone home. But people drove their vehicles there to grab a flight to get out. And so we had an unintended parking challenge as well, but the District of Hope was very helpful in helping us to organize that and keep that running as well. Next slide, please. You also see a variety of conditions that we're contending with. Of course, the atmospheric river, very wet, soggy conditions, which changes what you can and can't land there. The air park in Hope is very important for emergency landings as well, air ambulance, those types of things. And so you'll see a variety of conditions that we're working with to keep that air park up and running. And the District of Hope has been very helpful in terms of supporting us where they can as well. Next slide, please. So you'll see a photo here of supply drops. I still don't have all the numbers in total, but there was so many supplies being flown into the air park. Lots of people on the ground to help. And it was just a lot of the times it had an intended place. A lot of times it did not have an intended place that people were just trying to help. So it was a really interesting community event, and we're happy to be a part of it. Now, while the event itself is kind of died down, we're still dealing with ongoing response. The air park actually is a landing zone for a lot of industry, which is going up farther to the Coquihalla and things like that. And so we continue to be really busy. Air ambulance flights seem to be a little bit more than normal. And it could be just because of road closures and that type of thing. But we are prepared. The operator out there is prepared, and we're just continuing to work through those things as they come. So that gives you a bit of a snapshot of the air park and what's been happening out there. The next slide, please. So we're going to move on to the recreation center. So of course, when an event like this happens, people look to their local community recreation center as a hub of the community. Of course, one of the challenges we had at the center was that, first of all, we were out of power, and we fortunately were able to get power back quick enough so we could save the ice. Saving the ice is important because A, it's really costly to put it in, and B, it allowed us to be able to transform that ice surface into a storage area for food for the community. So you'll see that in the next couple of photos. Next slide, please. So you'll see food started coming in, being piled in, and we were ended up becoming a distribution center for the community for those who needed it. We also were able to, when we could get enough staff into the area, be able to open up showers so that those who may have needed it could come and have a shower as well. Next slide, please. And you'll see us getting a little tidier as things. So there was about 2 or 3 days there where it was quite an active hub in terms of food distribution. And it was a great partnership with the local community, those coming to help, and our staff that could be there. So we're happy to be part of that. Moving on from that, we're actually right now just also working as a warming center and working on closing down those operations, but that's been up and running for the local community as well, I think since the 3rd of January. So it becomes really important for reasons other than recreation, which of course is somewhat challenged right now with all the requirements for COVID-19 around what we can and cannot do, but we're thrilled that we're able to help in different ways. Next slide, please. That really brings me to the end of my presentation. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Vagdeveen. That was a phenomenal presentation, and I just want to thank on behalf of the board, you and your staff. I know in addition to all of the works and all of the organizing and stuff you were doing, you were also spending a lot of time in the EOC, working extremely hard, and I just want to express my appreciation for that. So again, really, really appreciate it. Director Blue.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just adding to those comments. I also want to extend thanks. I know that it's an unprecedented time for everyone, and to be able to just respond that quickly and not even knowing what you're going to be expecting. There's, you know, it's an unwritten, uncharted area. So thank you so much for that. Question through to staff in terms of how much of the work and the extra things that have happened are going to be covered by emergency funding. And also just interested, I know it's early days for lessons learned, but just wondering if we're going to be seeing a report coming back about lessons learned and things that we can do for future proofing.
Thank you for those questions. Yeah, lessons learned, I think we're still learning, and we're still trying to digest. And one of the important things absolutely is working with the different stakeholders now that we've had a chance to maybe catch our breath. For example, there's many people involved in the air park operations, and I know the District of Hope as a whole will be looking at, lessons learned and that type of thing. And so we'll be trying to consolidate that and helping inform our response plans moving forward. I don't think ever in my lifetime I anticipated to get a call like I got that morning, that there's people abandoning their cars, and looks like Vancouver International. But you do what you do, and we can just try to set ourselves up as good as we can for the future. So we will be continuing to do that and bring that forward as we can. Thank you
so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Director Robb.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair Lum. I also want to extend my gratitude to the regional district staff and Christina, all your group there. Sorry, I'll shut that off. As you said, we are doing a debriefing, and we will work together on lessons learned for sure. There was a lot to learn in a short period of time. Your cooperation at the rec center was terrific. The food distribution worked very well through there. Just a couple of questions on your presentation, if I could. You didn't mention Thacker Marsh, where Suckers Creek drains into the Coquihalla. It's changed course. It's a different exit into the river. Will you be working on that? And the second part is, I'd like to work with you, if I could, in advocating for Othello tunnels. It's a disaster area out there. I don't see it opening for many years to come unless we do a lot of major work. And that brings approximately 100,000 visitors to our community every year. And it's not on the radar yet with BC Parks, but we need to work together if we can, and advocate for the repairs that need to be done over a long period of time. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Through the chair to Director Robb. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a snapshot of what we've seen. Is it complete? Absolutely not. And then with the more recent storms, of course, and snow and things like that, it's really challenged our ability to really see what's going on. And we've been triaging and prioritizing where we can. In the budget for this year, when we get to that point, you'll see some proposed money put towards Thacker as a whole, just for park improvements. And I would anticipate that Streamworks and those types of things may be a part of that as well. And I neglected to answer Director Blue's question around funding. So we were successful in getting funding for the air park for extra support for hours. We were also successful in getting funding for clearing at Island 22. We were not successful in getting funding for damage cleanup. However, there's a different mechanism for that. And so we are tracking those costs. There is what's called disaster financial assistance from the province. And we're just working through understanding what qualifies, what doesn't qualify. We may be able to recoup those costs. My understanding is that it comes in at about 80%. So we'll be able to track all of that and understand what the actual costs are for this. Director Robb, ironically, we're still dealing with the Atmospheric River event from about 2 years ago, where there was a significant amount of damage done on the Kettle Valley Rail Trail, the trail connection that leads to the Othello tunnels. We have been still working with the province on fixing some of those issues, and they certainly correlate with what's happening in the Othello tunnels. So we are not looking at it in isolation, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We're trying to work with BC Parks, the area as a whole, to understand what can be done. It is a hugely important area for the local community, but also for people who come to the area. So understanding what's going on and moving forward for safety will be a thing that we'll be looking at as well.
Thank you. Director Horn.
Thank you, and thank you to those who spoke before me, because they asked some of the same questions and certainly made many of the same points I would like to have made or was making. I want to add one more though, and that is just asking staff and Chair Lum, I don't know if these conversations are happening already, but at some point, as we're getting a clear idea of costing and of the major impact or the overall impact here, to think about how we might best take a case to the province and the federal government to think about addressing many of these issues. I've been asked in the last, went to bed last night with questions about this, woke up this morning to questions about what we're doing about diking, drainage. We all know the impacts. I won't enumerate them all, but some things I'm wondering about are whether we should be reaching out to Metro and, for example, trying to have some sort of an ad hoc advocacy group that went with a unified position on these things. I won't list off options, but I will suggest that we incorporate that into whatever reporting back we have, and B, an offer to be a part of anything. I think the more of us that are helping to put together sort of a thoughtful position, the more likely we'll be successful.
Yeah, I think that's a great and timely point, Director Horn. We've had some initial, Ms. Kinnaman and I have had some initial discussions with Metro Vancouver, and I think you'll see we just received some correspondence from them as well, talking about working together on kind of a task force to try and raise the profile on some of these long-standing issues that we haven't been able to get the traction that they need on both the provincial and federal side. So absolutely, it's absolutely in order. And I think it's something that, you know, I'll be bringing to the board to discuss for sure.
If I could just further add to that, Chair Lum, to Director Horn, in March, the annual Chair and CAO Forum is held as part of UBCM. They're just getting the agenda together, but just anecdotally, the top topic that has been put forward by all the regional districts is this emergency management issue and all of the things that you just pointed out. So I think there's strength in numbers, and I think it's heartening to know that there's others that are having that same line of thought.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Kinnaman. I don't see any other questions. So I just wanted to, again, say, Ms. Vagtveen, fantastic job. And please send our appreciation to the rest of the team as well, the park side. Okay, Ms. Kinnaman, next item.
Next item is 5.1.1. We have the Invasive Weed Control Program 2021 year-end summary.
Thank you. And this is this an information item?
It's an information item, but certainly staff can answer any questions if there were any.
Thank you. And any questions on this item? I don't see any. Next item.
5.2.1 is campground operator for the Vedder River Campground. There is a motion for your consideration.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Popov, seconded by Director Facio. Discussion. Director Facio, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just let me get to the page 25, 26. A question on the question on the cost of the contract. I see that's per year. May I ask, is that cost, is it for the cost of the operator plus all the maintenance to the campground? That it seems quite an excessive amount of money every year. So I'm not sure what that is really involves.
Thank you. Ms. Kinnaman, is that through to Ms. Douglas or?
Certainly, yeah. I see that Trina has put her camera on.
Yeah, so what the costs cover all of the staffing and maintenance and work. The contractor also does additional work with the water systems and the sewer systems throughout the season. So all of those costs are covered, including the machinery and any works within the agreement that the contractor provides.
Thank you. Douglas, does that satisfy your?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Facio. I also understand that we receive, you know, some enhanced, I guess, services from the camp host there. And I think there's some benefit in having somebody who, or a contractor that understands the facility. And so I'm happy to support as well. Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? If any, item carries. Next item.
5.2.2 is design build procurement for heat recovery project at Hope and Area Recreation Center. There is a motion for your consideration.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Robb and seconded by
Raymond.
Director Raymond. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed, if any. Item carries. Next item.
5.3.1, we have letter of support for the creation of a Bachelor of Regional and Community Planning at the University of the Fraser Valley.
Thank you. That's moved by Director Blue and seconded by Director Facio. Discussion. Director Blue.
Thank you. Really pleased to lend support to this. I think it's so important, you know, as we're looking forward and seeing where we're going to get the professional staff that we need to fill a lot of the positions that this type of background in education will provide, I think is really excellent. And again, always happy to support new programs coming through UFV and how much that really enhances the you know, the whole fabric of our community, having these educational facilities and these amazing programs.
Thank you, Director Blue. Director Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question through, if I could, to Ms. Stewart. I was curious what a young person in the Fraser Valley that would like to pursue a planning career, what would be their educational path without this program being in place?
Through the chair, the path would be, you would get it would be an undergraduate degree. And then the next step, and in some cases, people go directly into planning positions with an undergraduate degree. But a lot of people, the next step is to graduate school. And there's planning schools across the country where geography students from UFV have gone to, and those students have come back to this region to begin their career and to build their career. So it's been successful as an undergraduate geography program. This just creates a more focused study area and actually broadens the education before they go on to graduate school or into the employment world.
Good, it sounds like a really important project. Yeah. Certainly would have my support. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Dickey. Director Horn.
Thank you. I have comments following a question through you, Mr. Chair. Is this letter essentially a template letter, or are we allowed to add some commentary or thoughts in the letter that UFV has requested?
Chair, if you have some ideas that you would like to include, you can certainly include that.
I would ask or suggest two things. First, just I think we're all experiencing the same issue with folks that are recruited in the Valley and then poached by the metro communities. And so I would say that part of our business case in terms of this letter might say that we would potentially retain local talent, folks who have roots here in the sense of the community. I'm sure that was already a thought. The second one, though, is perhaps not been a thought. And I again wonder whether other communities are experiencing this. We often are trying to find this interdisciplinary person that doesn't easily exist, who has an understanding of social welfare needs and planning practices. And so I wonder if we can incorporate somehow into this letter a suggestion that they try to be creative in having folks with those kind of interdisciplinary skills. They absolutely have those competencies at UFV. I get the opportunity sometimes to even teach them. So I would really love to see that happen. Thank you.
I think those are both excellent suggestions from Director Horn, and I don't think we need a motion to highlight those in some of our in our letter of support. Any other questions, comments? Don't see any. I just add obviously my support. I think it's imperative that we do whatever we can to help support our local university, the regional university, and with the shortages that we have in not just regional districts, but in our respective local governments, you know, this makes a lot of sense. would also make a lot of sense for them to have an engineering school here at university. So we won't get too ahead of ourselves just yet. With seeing no more questions, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any, item carries. Next item.
Next, we will move down to item 8, which is reports by directors.
Thank you. Any reports from directors? Director Raymond, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to let directors know, and I know staff is working on it with me as well, in that the Emergency Health Services pulled all the ambulance service attendants out of Boston Bar just before the highway closed. So it left a community that is completely isolated with no medical services at all. They did say that they could come in by helivac people out, but the conditions, weather conditions in the canyon are changing all the time. So at times they cannot fly in there. And even if they could, that would leave a patient there with no one that has experience to care for that patient until such help would arrive. So I'm working very hard right now on trying to get some answers as to why that occurred. I have gone to the Ambulance Service Union, I've gone to Emergency Health Services, but I have not heard anything back from Emergency Health Services. So we'll continue to pursue that, and I want to thank staff for their help in this as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Raymond, for your hard work on that item. Director Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, for the benefit perhaps of the municipal directors here today, I just wanted to give them an idea of what we've experienced in the electoral area side of the Fraser Valley Regional District. We cover an incredibly vast piece of real estate that is extremely complicated, and a lot of our homes are on mountainsides and river bottoms. And when we have an event like we did in November, December, our staff just comes to a standstill with the regular activities because they're trying to address these issues. And we don't have public works departments or road crews or anything like that. We really need support from the province, and there's a crying need for a procedural change on how we're going to react to these events. Our lives still go on. Our builders expect to get their land use applications forwarded and get their inspections and permitting done. And there's no staff available to do that. So it's a massive undertaking, and something I think we really need to direct a lot of attention to make sure we can respond better in the future. Thank you.
Certainly, Director Dickey, it's something that we've underscored to provincial government fairly loudly and clearly, I think, but it's where we go from here and how they react, I think, is going to be critical moving forward. But thank you for that update. Director Facio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Director Raymond. Every month we have a mayor's meeting with the Fraser Health. I will bring up that your concerns as well, Director Raymond, to them, and I believe it's next week when the meeting is on. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Director Facio.
Thank you, Director Facio, and Director Horn.
Well, bad news first, good news second. I was very glad to hear Director Raymond. I expected that we would hear from that item, and we have a similar issue in Mission, where normally we would have 17 folks working out of our local BCAS station. We're down to 3, and often no cars. We had a pedestrian fatality the other day, and another person wasn't fatal, but was in critical condition, and no ambulance for more than an hour. And so I have a phone call with Dr. Lee from Fraser Health here in just about an hour, and I'll be bringing it up. But I do wonder whether or not we could consider whether through either the district board or through the hospital district board, we perhaps take a position, think about a joint letter or something to the province on this issue. It's obviously becoming chronic across our communities. So that's the first thought. The second one is just some good news, and that is that it was probably the worst kept secret ever, but it took forever to get the announcement. Just before Christmas, we did indeed hear that Mission will be getting a CAT scanner installed at Mission Memorial Hospital. So that's just shy of $10 million. And we thank everybody who's helped be a part of advocating for that. And that will help to equip us in a significant way here.
Great news.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And it just gives another piece of critical medical infrastructure into the valley. So good to hear. And absolutely hear you on your advocacy requests. And I think best place to park that is with the hospital district meeting, and Chair Raymond, for you to work on that with Director Horn at our next hospital district meeting. I think that's probably the most appropriate place for it to come from.
Absolutely, totally agree. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other reports. Ms. Kinnaman, next item.
Moving down to public question period for items relevant to the agenda. I'll just turn things over to Jamie Van Ness in our boardroom.
Good morning. I'm joining you from the boardroom, which is open to the public. We do not have any members of the public with us here today. We have not received any written questions, and we have nobody joining us on the line. So we can move to the next item on the agenda.
Thank you. Ms. Kinnaman, next item.
Looking for a resolution to close the meeting.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Facio, seconded by Director Popov. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carries. It was second.
Minute. Yep.